Continuing with charity, chapter 5, charity, love, page 89. The proper use of the will. Feelings, as we have seen, may be of service as motives of charity, but charity as charity has its beginning in the will to peace and humility in oneself, will to patience and kindness towards one's fellow creatures, will to that disinterested love of God which asks nothing and refuses nothing. By allowing all things, you transcend all things. But the will can be strengthened by exercise and confirmed by perseverance. Just as the soul is the life of the body, so charity is the life of the soul. Little comment there. Camus, right. Oh, I do remember this. How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? And Camus was talking about Francois de Sales. And he's pestering him. He's like, come on, tell us the secret. He would give no other answer. At last, however, the bishop said, there are many besides you who want me to tell them of methods and systems and secret ways of becoming perfect. And I can only tell them that the sole secret is a hearty love of God. And the only way to attaining that love is by loving. You learn to speak by speaking, to study by studying, to run by running, to work by working, and just so, you learn to love God and man by loving. All those who think to learn in any other way deceive themselves. If you want to love God, go on loving him more and more. Begin as a mere apprentice. And the very power of love will lead you on to become a master in the art. Those who have made most progress will continually press on, never believing themselves to have reached their end, for charity should go on increasing until we draw our last breath. That is what consciousness is and does. It continues, it increases, it shares, it extends. So, what is the purpose of carnal love? We've all had moments and this can just be, between people, between self, between an activity, nature, work. So here we are looking at this idea, the final end in unitive love knowledge of the divine ground, but all insist no less strongly that carnal love is a necessary introduction and an indispensable means, as is everything. What do you get out of it that shows you more of what you are and what consciousness is? And this is from Cheng Tzu. Those men who in a special way regard heaven as Father and have, as it were, a personal love for it, how much more should they love what is above heaven as Father? Other men in a special way regard their rulers as better than themselves, and they, as it were, personally die for them. How much more should they die for what is truer than a ruler? All right, so what does this mean? What does this have to do with carnal love? Well, when the springs dry up, the fish are all together on dry land. They then moisten each other with their dampness and keep each other wet with their slime. But this is not to be compared with forgetting each other in a river or a lake. So let's just say, all right, so what does Huxley have to say about it? He actually does a pretty good job. The slime of personal and emotional love is remotely similar to the water of the Godhead's spiritual being, but of inferior quality, and precisely because the love is emotional and therefore personal, of insufficient quantity, having by their voluntary ignorance, wrongdoing, and wrong being caused the divine springs to dry up. Human beings can do something to mitigate the horrors of their situation by keeping one another wet with their slime. It's okay. But there can be no happiness or safety in time and no deliverance into eternity until they give up thinking that slime is enough, and by abandoning themselves to what is in fact their element, your true element, consciousness. Call back the eternal waters. To those who seek first the kingdom of God, all the rest will be added. From those who, like the modern idolaters of progress, he's not very fond of those guys, Huxley here, seek first all the rest in the expectation that, after the harnessing of atomic power in the next revolution, but three. Anyway, the kingdom of God will be added. Or maybe it doesn't exist at all, so just get what you can. But to those, he's saying everything will be taken away. He never really had anything. And yet we continue to trust in progress, to regard personal slime as the highest form of spiritual moisture, and to prefer an agonizing and impossible existence on dry land to love, joy, and peace in our native ocean. Yeah. St. John of the Cross says, the soul lives by that which it loves rather than in the body which it animates. For it has not its life in the body, but rather gives it to the body and lives in that which it loves. And here is a bit of a thesis on charity. The distinguishing marks of charity are disinterestedness, tranquility, and humility. This is what we're searching for when we do contemplation and meditation. Simply being. But where there is disinterestedness, there is neither greed for personal advantage nor fear for personal loss or punishment. Where there is tranquility, there is neither craving nor aversion, but a steady will to conform to the divine Tao or Logos on every level of existence, and a steady awareness of the divine suchness and what should be one's own relation to it. And where there is humility, there is no censoriousness and no glorification of the ego or any projected alter ego at the expense of others, who are recognized as having the same weaknesses and faults, or the same eternal consciousness, the same eternal being, but also the same capacity for transcending them in the unity of knowledge of God, as one has oneself, as everyone has. From all this, it follows that charity is the root and substance of morality, and that where there is little charity, there will be much avoidable evil. All this has been summed up in Augustine's formula: love and do what you like. Now that's the real meaning of of antinomianism. When properly understood, love and do what you like. And as an example, John Everd says, turn the man loose who has found the living guide within him, and then let him neglect the outward if he can. Just as you would say to a man who loves his wife with all tenderness, you're at liberty to beat her, hurt her, or kill her if you want to. Hans Denk. God forces no one, for love cannot compel. And God's service, therefore, is a thing of perfect freedom. And isn't that what we're looking for? Perfect freedom. That would be nice. There's a lot of stuff about how to properly work in the world and use, and yeah. There's 3 full pages here, page 94, 95, and 96, that go on and on in great ways of how to properly apply a lot of these concepts of charity and how it's gone well or how it's gone poorly. And so let's finish with this. This is a good piece here. 95. So, to society. Lead us not into temptation must be the guiding principle of all social organization, and the temptations to be guarded against and, so far as possible, eliminated by means of appropriate economic and political arrangements are temptations against charity. That is to say, against the disinterested love of God, nature, and man. First, the dissemination and general acceptance of any form of the perennial philosophy will do something to preserve men and women from the temptation to idolatrous worship of things in time. Church worship, state worship, revolutionary future worship, humanistic self-worship, all of them essentially necessarily opposed to charity. Next come decentralization. Widespread private ownership of land and the means of production on a smaller scale, discouragement of monopoly by state or corporation, division of economic and political power. The only guarantee, as Lord Acton was never tired of insisting, of civil liberty under law. These social rearrangements would do much to prevent ambitious individuals, organizations, and governments from being led into the temptation of behaving tyrannously, while cooperatives, democratically controlled professional organizations, and town meetings would deliver the masses of the people from the temptation of making their decentralized individualism too rugged. Still have it, it's fine. This is just a general idea, like some guiding principles. But of course, none of these intrinsically desirable reforms can possibly be carried out so long as it is thought right and natural that sovereign states should prepare to make war on one another. For modern war cannot be waged except by countries with an overdeveloped capital goods industry, countries in which economic power is wielded